Howdy. Um, I'm a trail boss here for a company that helps take uh, travelers such as yourselves from Missouri out to the Oregon country. It is my understanding that several of you, in fact, will be joining me here in a couple weeks for that Oregon Trail. Before we get there, I thought it was important to give you kind of some background information on how we've gotten to this idea of traveling out west from the last time you were looking at the history. We're going to get that. So, yeah, in a couple weeks, you guys will be able to kind of try out one of these here covered wagons, although this one's missing a cover at the moment. But we'll get you set up so you guys can head out west. Okay. But today we're going to talk about Manifest Destiny. It was kind of the foreign/domestic policy from 1803 to 1853, and we're going to see those events and how they played out. So again, like I said, we're going to see how they played out. So Manifest Destiny was this idea that Americans had not only the right but the responsibility to travel out west, to connect this continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and to colonize and take control of that land. It was made popular by President Polk, who coined this phrase Manifest Destiny, which translates to obvious fate, to spread democracy and spread those true American ideals. Okay, so this all starts in 1803 with Louisiana Purchase. This was set up by Thomas Jefferson, who's one of our first presidents. And so he bought the Louisiana Territory, not to be confused with Louisiana State, from the French, who, at this point, Thomas Jefferson just wanted the port of New Orleans, so just a city down at the very bottom of Louisiana Territory. However, he offered $10 million for New Orleans. Napoleon, who had led his revolt in France and was trying to pursue his ideals of political free will there, didn't really need the land that he had, or that France had control of in North America. So he wanted to kind of sell some of it off. He was also kind of strapped for cash. So he countered and said, instead of 10 million for the city, how about 15 million for all this land? Thomas Jefferson jumped at that idea. He said yes, although it didn't really say it with congressional approval, so Congress had to struggle to kind of catch up. This doubled the land mass of the United States, actually even a little bit more. And so this then connected the United States, those originally 13 states, with some of the territory they had in the Ohio Valley, all the way out to the Rockies. Okay, so it gets us a lot closer to the Pacific Ocean, and that eventual idea of Manifest Destiny. Okay, so this happened in 1803. We move forward a couple years. We have 1819. Florida at this point is not part of the United States. It's controlled by Spain. There are Native American tribes called Seminole Indians. They were attacking on the border with different disputes and things like that. Runaway enslaved people from the South were heading to Florida because it was under control of another country. And so President Monroe decides that he wants to stop this. It's not really in his mind to go and take Florida. He just wants to set up troops along the border to kind of stop this and save those settlers and those American citizens who are living on the border. He sends a general by the name of Andrew Jackson down to Florida. Now, Andrew Jackson, he thinks, the best defense is good offense. So instead of going and stopping the tribes that were coming across and stopping the Spanish citizens who were coming across and raiding, he decides he's going to invade Florida and basically conquers all of Florida. And Monroe has to make a decision. Is he going to reprimand his general? Is he going to strip his general of his commission? Is he going to punish this general? Or is he going to look at this opportunity to increase the land of the United States? And so the Spanish government sends a letter to President Monroe saying, hey, you need to get your guy in control. President Monroe sends a letter back to him and says, hey, you know what? If you are not strong enough to hold on to this land, then you don't deserve it. They go back and forth. Spain ends up selling Florida to the United States for $5 million and the control of Texas and the promise that they're not going to interfere with Texas. Okay, so this is 1819. 11 years later, it's 1830s. Stephen Austin. So Texas is part of Spain at this point. There's a revolt. Mexico takes control of Texas from Spain. And a guy named Stephen Austin decides that he's going to start trying to colonize Texas kind of in a back way. So he takes 300 families. They become the old 300. And they go and they start just living in Texas. They colonize the land. They kind of raise it up. Mexico's fine with this, but they said, you know what, you need to become Mexican citizens. You need to follow our laws, and you need to join the Catholic Church. The Americans aren't really fond of this because they have their own views. They see themselves as Americans. Americans complain. Mexico says, fine, you guys can't come anymore. And they close off the border between the United States, or between United States and Mexico-controlled Texas. They guard that border. They don't let people over. Then, at this point, Texas and Mexico are controlled by Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. He's a general. He kind of wants to flex the military might of Mexico. Stephen Austin goes to try to negotiate with them. He says no, and he just throws him in jail. Santa Anna throws Stephen Austin in jail. This led to an attack on a fort called the Alamo. Went from February 23rd to March 6th. So coming up on the anniversary there right now. And so Mexico attacked. It's a 13-day siege. Kills all of the men, leaving only some of the women and children, and enslaved people alive. Next, in April, the army goes and massacres the rebels at Goliad. After the Alamo and Goliad, the idea here is that Santa Anna is thinking, hey, if I go and destroy their forts, I'm going to break their spirit. They're not going to want to fight. However, the Texans decide to rise up, and they fight back, and they chant out, remember the Alamo, remember Goliad. This becomes the Battle of San Jacinto, and I'm probably saying that incorrectly, and I do apologize. Texas wins its independence. So Texas becomes an independent nation. Okay? In 1836. 1845, so 9 years later, okay, Santa Anna was captured and forced to sign a treaty giving Texas its independence. Texas becomes an independent state in 1936 called the Lone Star Republic. Sam Houston becomes president. Right, so Houston, it's a name we should think about with the capital. So annexation of Texas was delayed, worried that adding Texas as a slave state would upset the balance between free and slave states. Right, because it's in the South, there's this really precarious balance between those states that allowed enslaving of people and those states that did not. And so there was worry. There was also worry that if Texas became part of the United States, this would lead to war with Mexico. Okay. Texas, however, does join the U.S. and becomes the 28th state in 1845. Okay. Oregon country, so this is 1846. 1820, so we're going back in time, right? The U.S. and Britain claimed to own Oregon country. They both claimed it, right? 1830s and 40s, thousands of American pioneers were going west to settle in Oregon country, much like you guys are going to go west here in a little bit. And so the idea is that whoever has the most people in that area can really lay claim to it. President Polk wanted all of Oregon, so the 54-50 parallel, so that's that line that separates Oregon from up north. People would cry 54-40 or fight. So this idea of like, we want this territory, and if we're not going to get all of it, we're gonna go to war with you. Neither Polk nor Britain really wanted a war, so it was kind of a chicken fight. They were seeing who's going to flinch first. Okay. Britain and the United States compromised. They split Oregon in half at the 49th parallel, so not 54-40, but the 49th, and the U.S. got the southern half. Okay, so if we think back, right, one of the reasons why the United States did not annex or take control of Texas right away was they were worried there was going to be a war with Mexico. 1846, there's war with Mexico. Um, Polk wanted to expand the U.S. Again. President Polk wanted to go all the way out to the west, expand the U.S. territory, clear the Pacific Ocean. He offered to buy California and New Mexico territories from Mexico for $30 million. Mexico refused. After the United States annexed Texas, took control of it in 1845, Mexico and the United States disagreed on the Texas border. Right, the Texas became part of the United States, and it was kind of like two angry neighbors looking at the property line, trying to figure out where that property split. Okay. United States claimed that the Rio Grande River was the border. Mexico claimed that the Nueces River was the border. So again, there's a little bit of difference right there. U.S. sent troops to patrol the border. Conflicts broke out. The Mexican army killed U.S. troops on the disputed land. So it was one that no one really understood who's controlled. Polk declared war, claiming Mexico spilled American blood on American land. Okay, so again, we're at war right now. United States Army had better weapons and equipment, but was greatly outnumbered by the Mexican forces and was poorly prepared. So better technology, but didn't know the area, and there was vastly more Mexican troops than American troops. United States took New Mexico territory without a fight and claimed the territory. Zachary Taylor defeats Santa Anna at the Battle of Buena Vista. The U.S. troops under Winfield Scott, also known as Old Fuss and Feathers, captures Mexico City. So they go south. Okay? This led to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ends the war and splits up the disputed land. Okay? Now we have the Bear Flag Revolts. This is 1846. So there's a small group of American settlers seize the town of Sonoma. Americans declared California an independent nation and made the grizzly bear the flag. So if you guys ever look at the California flag, that might explain why there's a bear on it. Okay? John C. Fremont was leading a mapping expedition of the Sierra Nevadas. He joined the American settlers in the revolt against the Californios. So these would be those Mexican settlers of California. Shortly after the U.S. naval forces came ashore in California and raised the stars and stripes, they claimed California in the United States. So whereas Texas was its own independent nation for about 9 years before it became part of the United States, California was its own independent nation for a couple weeks. Okay? Now we have Mexican cessation, 1846. Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, Mexico gave the United States territory of California, Nevada, and Utah. So everything north of what we know is the border now. Most of Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The U.S. also claimed Texas north of the Rio Grande, which if you go back, right, that was that border of disputed land. Okay, U.S. paid $15 million for the territory. So if we think about it, right, we've got $15 million for for Louisiana territory. We have $5 million for Florida. Now we have $15 million for this territory. I'm also going to point out, right, this is half of what the United States had offered Mexico for twice the land. Okay? So today we know this area is the American Southwest. Mexico's cessation increased the size of the United States by 25%. So that amount that we took control of from Mexico increased again. Okay? Here's a map of the area. You'll notice, right, that there's still a small sliver kind of on the bottom of Arizona and New Mexico that is not U.S. territory yet, but, spoiler, will become U.S. territory in time. We have the Gadsden Purchase in 1853. Okay. After the War in Mexico, Americans wanted to guarantee that any southern railroad to California would be built completely on American soil. U.S. paid $10 million for the southern parts of Arizona and New Mexico. So if we go back to the previous map, right, it's that little tiny bit. So it was $15 million for all of that light tan and $10 million for just that little tiny strip. Okay. The existing boundary between the U.S. and Mexico was fixed, and it's been that way since then. Okay. Again, here's that map. So that huge chunk was $15 million. This tiny little sliver was $10 million. Donner Party, 1846. So now we're getting into those people who are traveling out west. When you guys went to Sutter's Fort, right, you might, in younger grades, you might have recognized Donner Party. So settlers bound for California took a southern route known as the California Trail. There's the Oregon Trail, which is the northern route, which is the one that we're going to be taking here in a couple weeks. This path went through the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Settlers tried to cross the mountains before the first snow. Guidebooks helped pioneers find their way there. We have Lansford Hastings wrote that immigrant guides to Oregon and California. Hastings' guide advertised a new shortcut that would save 300 to 400 miles. But Hastings never traveled that route himself. Okay? So following Hastings' guide and shortcut, the Donner Party left the California Trail and got lost. They were trapped in the Sierra Nevadas in winter. They were stuck without food and resorted to eating the dead to survive. So of the 87 members of the Donner Party who left, only 42 made it. Okay? And here again, it's that Immigrant's Guide to Oregon and California. It's that route that was promised that Hastings never actually went on. Here we go. California Gold Rush, 1849. California was found in gold was found in Sutter's Mill in 1848. Okay? In 1849, about 80,000 gold seekers, known as the 49ers, because they left in 1849, that's why they're the 49ers, came to California hoping to strike it rich. Panning for gold was the simplest method, where miners would fill a pan with dirt and put the pan underwater and shake it until the gold settles to the bottom. So the idea is that gold is more dense, so it would go further down. The dirt would go to the top, and you could kind of scrape that dirt off. Here's a picture of Sutter's Mill, and there's a picture of gold mining. If you are interested, there's a town in not too far from here, Columbia, where you can go gold mining yourself. Mining camps sprung up wherever there was enough people gathered to look for gold, so these camps would provide some mutual safety and security. Mining camps, many people prospected to search for gold. Others ran businesses that catered to the miners, so laundry, restaurants, innkeepers, legal services, supplies. These towns would just spring up. Famine and economic hardship in China brought many Chinese to California. However, they faced discrimination and high taxes on foreign miners. So it was not a great time to be a Chinese immigrant at this point. So we got the impact of the gold rush here. The arrival of 49ers created a population boom. California became a very populous area, which continues to this day. Immigration increased diversity in population. California became a state in 1 year, so in 1850. Growth of new businesses and industries transformed California's economy. Gold mining was important, but farming and ranching grew. So one thing I do want to say, yes, California became a state in 1 year. That doesn't mean that that's when the Bear Flag Revolt was, right? Because California was part of it was a territory that belonged to the United States, but actually became a state shortly after gold was discovered. Okay. So discrimination of Californios and Native Americans. Californios would be those Mexican Americans who traveled to California to settle and stayed there after Mexico gave up that land. And then Native Americans would be those indigenous people who were already there. So there we go. That's just a little bit about Manifest Destiny. You're going to hear more about exploration next week. But just wanted to give you a little taste of what happened in history from the early 1800s to the mid 1800s. We're going to get into some more next week. And then in a few weeks, we will take to the wagon trail ourselves. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please reach out to your individual teachers and they can help you.